Chapter 3. Letting Go of the Past. In the final analysis, the question of why bad things happen to good people transmutes itself into some very different questions, no longer asking why something happened, but asking how we will respond, what we intend to do now that it has happened. Harold S. Kushner. Your goal in life is to be happy, joyous, and free as much of the time as you possibly can. Your aim must be to get rid of all the old baggage and negativity that holds you back like a lead weight and stops you from achieving all that is possible for you. Perhaps the most important principle of success and happiness is contained in the law of forgiveness. You are mentally healthy to the degree to which you can freely forgive, forget, and let go of any negative experience. Almost all the great religions teach the importance of forgiveness as the key to the spiritual kingdom. If you cannot forgive, you are locked in place. You cannot make any progress. You're held back year after year by your refusal or unwillingness to let go of a previous hurt. A mental loss. The law of emotion says that everything you do is motivated by an emotion of one kind or another, positive or negative. You can hold only one thought in your conscious mind at a time, positive or negative, and you are always free to choose. The law of habit says that whatever you do repeatedly eventually becomes a new habit. The rule is that good habits are hard to form but easy to live with. Bad habits, especially emotional reactions, are easy to form but hard to live with. The majority of what you do, think, say, or feel is determined by habit, either good or bad. The law of substitution says that you can substitute a positive thought for a negative thought. You can deliberately decide to think a thought that makes you positive or happy as a substitute for any thought that makes you unhappy. Two brain mechanisms, but here is the kicker. You have both a success mechanism and a failure mechanism in your brain. The success mechanism is activated when you think positive, loving, forgiving thoughts about yourself and other people and focus on your goals. These thoughts require conscious, continuous, deliberate effort on your part. They do not happen by accident, but by design. Your failure mechanism, unfortunately, works automatically when you stop thinking about what you want and the things that make you happy. Your failure mechanism is a default setting that is activated as soon as you stop thinking positive, constructive thoughts. This means that if you do not deliberately choose to think thoughts that make you happy, your mind defaults to negative thoughts that make you unhappy. Fortunately, by the law of habit, if you discipline yourself to keep your mind on positive thoughts, it eventually becomes a habit. When positive thinking becomes a habit, it becomes your automatic setting, and you begin to perform at your best at home and at work. Unhappy today because of yesterday. The primary reason that people are unhappy today is because they are still angry with someone who did or did not do something to them or for them in the past. They still have not forgiven another person for a mistake they feel that person made or a wrong they feel that person inflicted upon them. Here are a few common sources of past anger or hurt that can still affect you today. Parents and children. When you are a child, your parents take care of everything. They feed you, bathe you, clothe you, take you to school, pick you up, and watch over you. At an early age, most children get the feeling that they are surrounded by the arms of a protector who is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-wise. As a result, children come to expect that they live in a rational, logical, and orderly universe where their all-knowing parents care for them, protect them, and make the best decisions for them. According to Jean Piaget, the Swiss psychologist and child development specialist who wrote The Construction of Reality in the Child, children evolve and mature, moving upward through ever complex levels of understanding and human interaction. At one of these levels, early in life, children expect everything to be fair and just. If for any reason they see or experience what they consider to be injustice in their world, they can become angry or disappointed, feelings that can carry on into their adult lives. Frustrated expectations. Many negative emotions also arise from frustrated expectations over past events. This means that a person expected things to happen a certain way, and for whatever reason, things turned out differently than anticipated, and not in a good way, at least according to the person experiencing the frustrated expectations. As a result, the individual feels angry and disappointed. She lashes out and demands that her expectations be fulfilled. If the situation is not corrected to her liking, she becomes angrier and even more frustrated. Becoming attached to the outcome of a situation is quite normal. Often, based on information we collect and actions we take, we expect things to turn out a certain way. By determining our desired outcome in advance and taking steps to achieve it, we have a sense of control. we can plan what is often an unknowable future. It is when our expectations are frustrated by not getting the outcome we hoped for or strive to meet that we become angry or depressed. A word from Christina. I once worked with a couple whose biggest source of contention was her need and expectation for him to arrive home from work at the precise time he said he would be home. She viewed time in a very literal and precise way and would make preparations for the exact time that he would give her. On the contrary, her husband thought about time as a range. He would say he would be home at 7 o'clock. To her, that meant exactly 7 o'clock. To him, it meant between 7 and 8, depending on when he could actually leave work. He would say he'd be home by 7, and based on past experience, she would expect him to be late. She then would begin to feel angry and frustrated, assuming he didn't care enough about her to be on time. She took his tardiness as a personal insult. He then would arrive home to an unhappy wife, and a heated disagreement would ensue. This cycle continued for months. In working with them, I helped them to understand each other's ideas about timing. I helped her to understand that she needed to accept his range approach so that she could change her expectations and stop setting herself up for disappointment. And I emphasized to him that his insistence on citing a specific time for when he would be home was understandably hurting his wife's feelings, and he needed to give her a range instead. When they managed to do these things, it completely changed the quality of their relationship. She could still plan for his arrival, but accept that his timing was more flexible than she had previously understood. In turn, he became more punctual and looked forward to coming home and seeing her as opposed to dragging his feet, dreading the daily battle. Bounce back. A good way to bounce back from any situation that does not turn out the way you expected is for you to look for the good in the unexpected outcome. You can always find something positive and beneficial, and while you are searching, you will remain calm and positive. Exercise. Look into a current situation in your life that is making you mad or sad. What is good in this situation? Napoleon Hill wrote, "Within every problem or difficulty, there lies the seed of an equal or greater advantage or benefit." What could that seed be for you? Remain flexible, stay flexible, be open to the fact that things do not always turn out exactly as you expected. Keep your mind open. As children grow and develop, they learn that life is not black and white, but many shades of gray. Sometimes things work out well, and sometimes they don't. Life is a series of ups and downs in which sometimes parents make the right decisions and sometimes they don't. However, many children fixate at a particular level of development, expecting and then demanding that life be fair, just, consistent, and predictable. Once fixated at this level, they can grow into adults who still demand that life be consistent and predictable. When it is not, they become angry, frustrated, and often depressed. Another way to increase your flexibility is to lower your expectations of a situation that typically causes you frustration. You can actually set the situation up to be a success and enjoyable for you by doing this. For example, I work with a lot of women who are balancing motherhood and a profession. These women often attempt to accomplish too much throughout the day, and when there are things left undone or incomplete at the end of the day, they feel dissatisfied with themselves and their results for that day. The solution to this self-induced pressure is for you not to take on more work than you can get done in the time you have available. Human imperfection. The fact is that human beings are imperfect. You are imperfect. I am imperfect. Every individual and every organization consisting of individuals is imperfect. People make mistakes. They do wicked, senseless, brainless, foolish, and cruel things. This is the way the world is and has always been. To expect everything to be fine all the time is to court eternal frustration and doubt. And yet, unconsciously, many people go through life expecting that all will be well. Many people, while growing up, get the idea that the world is supposed to unfold in a particular way. If it does not, instead of adjusting and adapting, they become angry, frustrated, and determined either to impose their will on their world or make other people behave in a way more in harmony with what they have come to expect. This attitude is a major motivator of political activity. The miracle of forgiveness. The decision to practice forgiveness as an ongoing policy in life is essential in moving from being a child to being an adult. When you forgive, you free yourself from negative emotions and guilt, and you free other people as well. You move from victim to victor, you free yourself from the baggage of the past and unleash your potential for realizing your future. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Forgiveness is the key. Your ability to freely forgive other people is the mark of your development as a fully functioning person. The greatest souls of the ages have been those who have developed themselves to the point where they hold no animosity toward anyone for any reason. Your goal should be the same. The practice of forgiveness is your key to becoming everything you are capable of becoming. The common error. Some people think it is not possible to forgive. They are convinced that forgiving another person is the same as approving of his behavior or condoning the unkind or cruel thing he has done. They feel that by forgiving, they are actually letting the other person off the hook, letting him go free when it is clear that he has done or said something harmful or hurtful. But here's the key. Forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. Forgiveness has only to do with you. It is a perfectly selfish act. By forgiving the other person, you do not set him free, you set yourself free. The comedian Buddy Hackett once said, "I never hold grudges. While you're holding grudges, they're out dancing." It is said that most of our problems in life come with hair on top and talk back. Almost all your negative emotions, especially those of anger and guilt, are associated with another person or persons. When I ask my clients, what is the biggest problem, worry, or concern in your life today? The answer almost always comes back as another person or persons. Green buttons and red buttons. My friend Jim Newman conducted a 3-day seminar on personal growth and effectiveness for many years. Part of the seminar involved imagining a series of red buttons and green buttons on your chest. Whenever someone pushes one of your green buttons, you smile and are happy. Whenever someone pushes one of your red buttons, you become angry and want to strike out. The green buttons are happy memories and associations with people in your life whom you love and enjoy, such as your spouse or children. The red buttons are attached to memories of people who have hurt you and whom you automatically feel angry about when their name is mentioned, or even when something reminds you of them. Consciously rewire your buttons. What Jim taught was that the key to taking complete control of your emotions is to rewire your buttons. The way you do this is by reprogramming yourself to think a positive thought rather than a negative thought whenever one of your red buttons is pushed. When you do this repeatedly, the negativity associated with that other person becomes weaker and weaker and eventually disappears. Here is a simple statement that you can repeat whenever the unhappy memory of that person is triggered. God bless him, her. I forgive him or her and wish him or her well. And then just let it go and get your mind busy elsewhere, because your emotions operate at such an incredible speed. It is not possible to gain control of them at the moment that they are triggered by a negative memory. You must program them in advance. You do this by saying, whenever I think of that person, I will bless, forgive, and let go. Simple psychology, you can think only one thought at a time. When you deliberately think a positive thought, all negative thoughts stop instantly. If you keep thinking positive thoughts, though it may be difficult at the beginning, by the law of habit, it soon becomes automatic and easy. It is not possible to remain angry with someone if you bless him, forgive him, and wish him well. As you repeat these words over and over, you will eventually find that when that red button is pushed, it has been disconnected from your emotions. Whereas before the thought or image made you angry, now your response is completely neutral. You feel nothing at all. Soon you actually forget about the person or situation completely. It's quite amazing, and sometimes life-changing. The key to happiness. The practice of forgiveness is the key to your happiness. From now on, when you think of someone who still makes you unhappy, use your wonderful intelligence to think of reasons to forgive and let go. Instead of reminding yourself of the unkind things that person did to hurt you, you bless, forgive, and let go. Soon this response becomes a habit, and your whole personality changes for the better. Exercise. Make a list of 3 to 5 people you are still angry with. Think about each person and then say to yourself, I choose to let go of this situation, and I forgive him, her for everything. The process of forgiveness. When we explain the importance of forgiveness in our seminars, almost everyone agrees that it is a good policy. They all nod, smile, and agree that in the future, they are going to freely forgive others who have hurt them and let them go. But when we come to the specific people they need to forgive, the emotional blocks appear. 4 people to forgive. There are 4 people you must learn to forgive if you truly want to be happy. Your parents, your past relationships, everyone else, and most important, yourself. 1. Your parents. The first people you have to forgive are your parents. Most adults are still angry about something that one of their parents did or did not do to them or for them while they were growing up. They expected their parents to behave in a certain way, and their parents did something different. The adult children are still angry today, often after many years. At a seminar in Orlando, Florida, I had lunch with one of my participants, a man named Bill. He told me about his ex-wife, whom he had divorced after more than 20 years. She had been negative, angry, and complaining the entire time, and finally he'd had enough. He wasn't willing to spend the rest of his life with that kind of person. As he told me his story, he mentioned having lunch with his ex-wife the previous week. Because they had 2 children, they had to meet and talk occasionally. At this luncheon, he told her that he was concerned about her negativity and how she seemed to continually criticize and complain about other people and situations. She reacted by saying, "Well, you'd be negative too if your mother had treated you the way my mother treated me when I was a teenager." Bill said, "Susan, you haven't lived with your mother for more than 25 years. How long are you going to use her as an excuse for your problems as an adult?" There are many people who are locked in place emotionally, still angry at one or both parents for injuries or hurts that happened many years ago. Sometimes people are still angry with their parents long after their parents have died. As a result, they remain as children in their own minds, see themselves as victims, feel angry and frustrated, and often take out their anger on their own spouses and children. The first people you have to forgive are your parents, whether they are living or dead, in the same city or living far away. You must freely forgive your parents for everything they did or said that hurt you in any way while you were growing up. You must say, "God bless them, I forgive them, and I wish them well." Here's a key point. Your parents did the very best they could with you, with who they were and what they had. They were products of their own childhood and upbringing. Their parents were in turn products of their upbringing by their own parents. In each case, they could not have done other than what they did. They could not have raised their children differently. They simply did not know how. Just as you were not perfect, your parents were not perfect either. They had fears and doubts, just as you do. They made mistakes and did silly, wicked, foolish, cruel, and brainless things. They brought you into the world with the very best of intentions and did the best they could with what they knew. Whenever you remember something your parents did that hurt you, remind yourself that if they knew that they had said or done something that caused you pain in any way, they would probably feel terrible about it. In most cases, parents would never do something intentionally to hurt their children. If you have children, imagine how you would feel if your child told you that you had hurt them in some way. You would never intentionally cause pain to your child, neither would your parents. Now you have to forgive them completely for every mistake they ever made in bringing you up. You have to let them off the hook. You have to set them free, because only in setting your parents free through the practice of forgiveness can you set yourself free as well. Only by letting them off the hook do you let yourself off the hook. Only by forgiving your parents do you become a fully functioning adult. One of my seminar participants went to his father's home after the seminar in which he learned these principles. He told me later that, at the age of 35, he was still furious about something his father had done when he was 15 years old. This brooding anger was affecting his relationship with his wife and children. He had to get it off his chest, so he went directly to his father's home from the seminar. His heart was pounding, but he went straight up to his father and said, "Dad, do you remember when I was 15 and you did that thing? I just want you to know that I forgive you completely for that and for every mistake you ever made in bringing me up. And I love you." His father was a gruff, stern working man. He looked the son in the eye and said in an irritated tone of voice, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I have never done anything in my life that I need to be forgiven for by you." He looked at his father with shock. He was stunned. He suddenly realized that he had been angry and upset for 20 years about something his father never even knew that he had done. He shook his head, shook hands with his father, and said goodbye. He walked out into the night feeling as if a huge burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Exercise. If your relationship with your parents was particularly bad, you may want to sit down and write a letter, spelling out every single thing that you can remember that caused you unhappiness or grief when you were growing up. You can start the letter by writing, "I want to forgive you for the following things that you did that hurt me when I was growing up." At the end of the letter, finish by writing, "I forgive you for everything. I love you and I wish you well." Exercise. If you are in contact with your parents, it may also be healing to sit down with them and explore the motivation behind something they said or did. Why did they do or say a particular thing? This can help you alter your perspective on the situation. Often, if you understand what was going on in your parents' minds at the time, you can completely change the way you feel about an experience. The key to making this work is that you must approach the discussion in a low-key, curious, and positive way. Be careful not to make your parents feel that you are attacking them. This will only make them defensive. a word from Christina. I have a friend who has always felt that her parents loved her sister more than they loved her. They treated her sister very differently and had a closer relationship with her. From childhood, my friend was aware of this difference. As she grew up, she felt that she had to work harder for acknowledgement and acceptance from her parents and was not given as many privileges as her sister. As the years went by, she felt more and more hurt, always wondering what was wrong with her and why her parents did not love the two children equally. One night she finally decided to confront them and ask why they continued to do certain things for her sister and not for her. What had she done to make them love her less? They responded with shock and surprise at the thought that they had treated the two girls differently. They were both absolutely convinced that they treated each child the same. They did not understand my friend's perspective. She came home that night realizing that her parents would never change or even agree that they treated the two girls differently. Nonetheless, she felt liberated and relieved to have expressed her feelings to her parents. They did not accept her feelings, but they did hear her, and that was all she needed. Once you have forgiven your parents, you will have made a giant stride forward. You will have done something that few people ever do in their entire lives. The very act of forgiving your parents will begin the process of personal liberation. You will already start to feel happier and at peace, even before you do it. 2. Past relationships. The second group of people you must forgive are all those in your past relationships, your romances, and your ex-spouses. Personal, intimate relationships make us very vulnerable to the way people treat us. We say and do things in the throes of love and passion that open us up and expose us to the other person. We give our minds, hearts, and bodies in some of the most intense moments of our lives. When a romantic relationship does not work out and falls apart, we are often overwhelmed by negative emotions. We feel anger and guilt. We experience envy and resentment. We justify and rationalize. We blame, criticize, and condemn. If we don't get our emotions under control, we can experience a mild or even a major form of insanity. We feel as if our whole emotional lives are plunged into a black hole. But here again, you must use your wonderful mind to diffuse these negative emotions, to resolve the situation in some way and get on with the rest of your life. The fact is, no one can have any control over your emotions unless there is still something that you want from him or her. In psychology, this is called the incomplete action. We are often angry and upset over a past relationship because there are one or more issues that have not yet been resolved. The worst of all is probably when one person is still in love and wants the other person to love him or her back. However, if the other person has moved on emotionally and has no more romantic interest in the past partner, the person who has been left behind emotionally can experience incredibly complicated feelings of anger, guilt, unworthiness, undeservingness, unattractiveness, and inferiority. The way to practice forgiveness in a past relationship is to accept responsibility for what happened or didn't happen. Instead of blaming the other person for what he or she did or didn't do, you must accept that you are equally responsible for getting yourself into the relationship and keeping yourself in it. In many cases, you probably knew that it was the wrong relationship to get into in the first place, and you probably knew that you should have gotten out a long time ago. In a study of several thousand married couples who had gone for premarital counseling, 38% of them, one or the other, admitted that they did not want to marry the other person. They felt it was a mistake, but they went through with the marriage ceremony anyway because they felt that their family and friends were expecting them to get married. The moral of the story is, never stay in a bad relationship out of fear of what others, especially your friends and family members, may think, feel, or say if you were to separate. Never do or refrain from doing something because you are worried about what other people might think about you. You will eventually learn that nobody was ever thinking about you at all. In fact, if you knew how little other people think about you, you would probably be insulted. Your whole romantic life could be going down the drain, and other people are only thinking about what they're going to have for lunch. It's okay to be a little selfish and put your own happiness first. Do only what you feel is the right thing to do for you. Never allow yourself to be influenced by the positive or negative opinions of others. Please at least yourself in all things if you can't please everyone else too. Many people will go through a bad marriage and divorce and will still be upset and angry 10 and 20 years later. They still blame the other person for the marriage not having worked out. They cannot let go of the fact that the marriage into which they had invested so much had failed. They still cannot forgive the other person for the things that he or she did or didn't do. But just as with parenting, when people get married, they do the best that they know how. No one enters into a marriage with the intention of it failing. They always enter into it with the very best hopes, dreams, and aspirations. If later, in the fullness of time, the people change and the marriage doesn't work out, it is not the fault of either party. In the movie Good Will Hunting, the critical point in the relationship between Matt Damon's character Will and Robin Williams' character Sean, Will's psychologist, comes after Will has explained the traumatic experiences of his youth. Sean says to him, "It's not your fault. This part of the movie is very moving and revealing." Will says, Sure, I know." Again, Sean says, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault." Finally, Will understands what Sean is saying. No matter what happened in his childhood, however traumatic it was not his fault. At that moment, he is free at last. In an unhappy marriage, it's not your fault either, nor is it the fault of the other person. The two people who were once compatible enough to marry are now no longer compatible. Incompatibility is not a choice. It is like the weather. It just happens. The two people drift apart and have different thoughts, feelings, and ideas about themselves, their lives, their work, their children, and their place in society. It is no one's fault. If you are in a situation in which you are still angry about a relationship or marriage that did not succeed, you must first decide in your own mind to let it go. As long as you cling to the hope that it will somehow come back together, you can never be free. You can never get on with your life. You can never be happy. Exercise. Write the letter. Once you've let it go, sit down and write the letter. This is one of the most powerful tools that you can use to set yourself free and achieve lasting happiness and peace of mind. This is what you do. Take a piece of paper and begin writing the letter addressing the other person. Your opening paragraph reads, "It is unfortunate that our marriage did not succeed. However, I accept complete responsibility for my role in the marriage, and everything I did or didn't do that led to its failure." Continue with, "I forgive you for everything you did or said that hurt me." At this point, many people make a list of every single thing they can think of that the other person ever did that still makes them angry when they think about it. The last line is simply, "I wish you well. Take this letter, seal it in an envelope, put the correct address and postage on the envelope, and drop it into the mailbox." The instant your hand lets go of this letter and you know that it is irretrievable, you will feel as though an enormous burden has been lifted off you. You will feel happy and relaxed. You will smile and feel at peace. At this point, people will often say, "But what if the other person misinterprets the letter and wants to get back together again?" The answer is simple. Don't worry. You are not writing this letter for the other person. You are writing this letter for yourself. As far as the other person is concerned, you don't care if he or she is happy or unhappy, angry or upset, pleased or displeased. You simply do not care. It is over. You are free at last. In many cases, when one person has the courage to accept responsibility and forgive the other person for everything that happened, the other person changes completely, losing all his or her animosity. All the negative emotions drain out of the memory of their relationship. Many former couples have told me that after one wrote this letter, the two became good friends and were able to be excellent parents to their children. If the act of mailing the letter is too intimidating for you, you can write the letter and instead rip it up and throw it away. But the mailing of the letter is the cathartic event that makes the forgiveness irreversible. 3. Everyone else. The third group of people you have to forgive is everyone else in your life who has ever hurt you in any way. You have to forgive your siblings who may have been unkind to you when you were growing up. You have to forgive your friends of all ages who may have done unkind or cruel things to you. You have to forgive your previous employers who may have treated you poorly or fired you unjustly. You have to forgive your business partners and associates who may have cheated you or cost you money. You have to forgive every person you can think of in any part of your life for whom you still hold anger and still blame for something he or she did. Remember, you are not forgiving all of these people for themselves. You are forgiving them for yourself. You do not even have to tell the other person that you have forgiven her. You can simply forgive her in your heart. Whenever you think of the other person, you quickly cancel the negative thought by saying, "God bless her. I forgive her and wish her well." Whenever a negative thought of that other person comes into your mind, immediately cancel it by blessing her and wishing her well. Refuse to discuss the other person or situation with others. This simply heaps fuel on the fire and delays the healing process. Instead, cancel the thought and blot it out of your mind. Eventually, you will think of that person less and less, and then you will forget her completely. You will not think of her at all. There are only two times of your life, the past and the future. The present is a fleeting moment between the two. One of the most important decisions you will ever make is to never allow yourself to be angry or unhappy about something you can't change, and you cannot change the past. It is over. It is gone. It is irreversible. But the future can be changed. It is under your control, and it is determined by what you do in the present. Imagine that you run into a man at a social function and ask him, "How are you doing?" He replies with a sour look and says something like, "I'm doing fine, but I'm still really angry about what happened." A bit surprised, you ask, "What happened?" He goes on to say, "Well, about 5 years ago, my family and I packed a picnic basket on Saturday night so that we could go out and have a nice picnic on Sunday. But on Sunday morning, it was overcast and raining for the whole day, so we had to cancel the picnic. And I'm still mad." At about this time, you would probably be thinking, this person needs a checkup from the neck up. He's not playing with a full deck. He's not thinking rationally. How could a person still be angry about the fact that it rained 5 years ago? This is ridiculous. Here's my point. Many people are still miserable and unhappy today because of something that happened or didn't happen years ago. They can't let it go. It may have been a difficult childhood. It could have been a bad marriage. It might have been a lousy job or a poor investment. But whatever it is, because of their inability to forgive and let go, they are trapped, like the dinosaurs in the tar pits, year after year. If you have led a normal life, you have made all kinds of mistakes and had all kinds of problems with all kinds of people over the years, starting from early childhood. This is normal and natural and a part of the human experience. The only question is, do you rise above it by practicing forgiveness early and often, or do you let it weigh you down and hold you back? Many people will agree by now that they should and will forgive all those people who have hurt them in the past. But at the same time, almost like a card player holding a card close to his chest, they carve out a single area of unforgivingness. They decide that they will forgive everybody they can think of, but there is one person who hurt them so much that he or she cannot be allowed to go free. But by holding on to this one negative emotion, the refusal to forgive this one person or what happened in that situation is enough to sabotage all your hopes and dreams for health, happiness, and personal fulfillment. One negative emotion that you hold on to can undermine all your hopes for happiness and joy in the future. 4. Finally, set yourself free. The fourth person you must forgive is yourself. Now that you have had the courage and character to forgive everyone in your life who has ever hurt you, you must forgive yourself and let yourself off the hook as well. Many people are held back all their lives because of a mistake they made in years past. Perhaps you did something wicked, brainless, or cruel when you were growing up. Perhaps you hurt someone in an early relationship. Perhaps you did something that caused a good deal of pain, money, and unhappiness to someone in work or business. Today, you feel remorse and regret. You feel unhappy and burdened. You wish you had not done or said what you did. You feel guilty and negative. These feelings can hold you back like weights from rising to fulfill your complete potential. They can be like that brake on the front wheel that is locked in place, causing your life to go in circles. Here is a key point. The person you are today and the person who did or said those things in the past are not one and the same. You are different today, wiser and more experienced. Someone who would never do the thing that the person you were in the past did at that time. You cannot continue to punish who you are today by continually regretting what you did when you were a different person a long time ago. Regret and remorse are not signs of responsibility or conscience. They are actually weaknesses that hold you back. Say to yourself, I forgive myself for what I did and I let myself go. That was then and this is now. Whenever you think of something that you did in the past that you are still unhappy about, forgive yourself and let yourself go. Recognize the difference. One of the most important distinctions you can make is between a fact and a problem. What is the difference? A fact is something that is unchangeable. Your age is a fact. The size of the world is a fact. There are certain things that simply exist. They cannot be altered. They are facts. One of the keys to happiness is for you never to become upset or angry about a fact. Just as you are not supposed to take out your anger on things, like kicking a piece of furniture, you shouldn't become angry or upset about facts. You simply accept them and get on with your life. What then is a problem? A problem is something you can do something about. It can be solved. For example, a goal unachieved is merely a problem unsolved. You can focus your intelligence and ability on solving problems and achieving goals. Problems are simply things that you deal with as you go through life. The times of your life. As we said earlier, there are two time periods in your life, the past and the future. The present is a moment passing between the two. Into what category of time do we put facts, and into what category do we put problems? The truth is that facts exist in the past. Something that happened in the past is a fact. It is unchangeable. This is important to understand because many people are miserable and unhappy in the present because something did not work out the way they expected it to sometime in the past. But because it happened or didn't happen in the past, it is an unchangeable fact. There is nothing you can do about it. Never become upset about a fact. A problem exists in the future. This is something that you can do something about. This is a time period when you can channel your intelligence and ability into achieving a different result. In anticipating the future and planning to achieve results, remember that the future has not happened yet, and until it occurs, nothing is certain. However, some people can anticipate and become attached to a future outcome, become anxious about that outcome. And then, if it does not work out as planned, they become afraid to take action in the future for fear that they may not succeed. Instead of thinking about the rewards of success, they become overwhelmed by the possibility of failure. This is the major reason for failure and underachievement in life. The therapeutic process in psychotherapy, a lot of the work we do revolves around understanding the past and recognizing the normal and natural feelings of anger, depression, irritation, selfishness, arrogance, insecurity, and undeservingness that can be triggered by past events. It is true that what has happened in the past is a fact and cannot be changed. But a big part of why people hang on to the past is because they have not grieved the loss of what could have or should have been. Feelings of regret and loss are triggered when people think about what might have been and what they might have done differently. Often by delving deep into what the person expected to happen and why she was disappointed, the psychotherapist and patient will arrive at a key assumption that is holding the person back. Once this false idea has been identified and understood, the individual's perspective will shift and her feelings will completely change. Be your own psychologist. Think back to your past life and identify the worst possible thing that happened that could still be causing you to experience feelings of guilt, anger, or unworthiness. It takes tremendous ego strength to confront this negative experience, but almost everyone has had at least one big negative experience in their lives. Exercise. When you think back and identify that one experience that continues to haunt you, ask yourself, what were the circumstances? How did that situation occur in the first place? If you could go back and talk to the person you were in the past, what advice would you give to your younger self about the situation? What lesson did you learn through that experience that you might not have learned? Otherwise, can you find something helpful or valuable that you gained from that experience? Now, to be free of this past event, you must share it with at least one other person. It is in this willingness and ability to share this event, often what you still think of as an embarrassing or shameful experience, with one other trusted person that you become free from it forever. 4 levels of personality development. There are 4 levels of mental and emotional development that each person needs to go through to be truly happy and free. Self-disclosure, self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-esteem. 1. Self-disclosure. This is where you openly and honestly admit the mistakes you have made, the fears you have, the weaknesses you deal with, and the other hidden parts of your life that you are accustomed to keeping to yourself. When you practice self-disclosure with at least one other person whom you trust, you will find that it is not as bad as you may have thought for a long time. Self-disclosure can be a liberating experience. 2. Self-awareness. After self-disclosure, you can move on to the next level of personality development, self-awareness. When you practice self-disclosure and find surprisingly that the other person does not react in a negative or judgmental way, you become more aware of yourself. Socrates taught that we learn something only by dialoguing about it with ourselves or others. The more you can talk out what you are thinking and feeling, the better you understand yourself and the situation, the more aware you become. 3. Self-acceptance. As you grow in self-awareness, you find that you are not a bad person, that you have many good qualities. You can then move to the next level of personal development, self-acceptance. You start to accept yourself as a good person. Your negative emotions of guilt and inferiority begin to fall away. You feel lighter and happier. Self-acceptance, seeing yourself warts and ality, seeing yourself warts and all, as Oliver Cromwell said, is the stepping stone to a healthy, happy personality. 4. Self-esteem revisited. Finally, you move to the highest level of personality development, that of self-esteem. Self-esteem is based on self-acceptance. The more you accept yourself and see yourself as a genuinely good person, the more you like and respect yourself. The more valuable and important you feel you are, the more you like others, and the more they like you. As you move upward through the stages of self-disclosure, self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-esteem, your life and your future open up to you like a summer sunrise. All the worries and negative feelings go away. Exercise. Once you've gone through this process yourself, you can encourage your friends and family to go through the same process. Expressing unconditional positive regard towards someone you care about, listening to him when he speaks, practicing non-judgment no matter what he says can be incredibly helpful. It can also be an amazing learning experience for you. The final stage. The final stage of setting yourself free requires tremendous ego strength and self-confidence. This is when you gather up your courage and apologize to someone whom you have hurt in some way. Because of the enormous power of justification, identification, rationalization, and hypersensitivity, the idea of apologizing to another person can be extremely stressful. But if you sincerely desire to be free from something you did in the past that you still feel bad about, you have no choice but to apologize. In Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12-step program identifies a crucial step toward personal growth and the healing process, making amends for any wrongdoing committed while in the grip of one's addiction. Taking responsibility for a previous mistake is not only a way to reconnect with someone you have wronged, but it also proves to yourself and to others that you are not the same person, and the person today acknowledges the effect of his or her previous behavior. Saying you are sorry allows you to let go and move forward. Fortunately, this is a simple process. You can phone the other person right now and just say, "Hello, this is your name, and I just wanted to call you and tell you that I'm sorry for what happened and I hope you will forgive me." It doesn't matter how the other person responds. She may blow up and become angry. She may hang up. But surprisingly enough, the other person will often say, "I am so glad you called. I accept your apology. Why don't we get together for lunch in the near future?" I have seen countless situations in which people who have been estranged for years have gotten back together and become good friends because one person had the strength of character just to say, "I'm sorry." It may be even better for you to go and see the individual in person if possible. At the very least, you can write a letter of apology and mail it. Here is a key point with regard to apologizing. Resist the temptation to tell your side of the story, to defend yourself, or to justify your past behavior. When you attempt to explain or justify what you did to hurt the other person, it can be seen as taking it back, leaving the situation unresolved. Just accept responsibility, say, "I'm sorry," and leave it at that. Finally, if you feel it is necessary and correct, offer to compensate or make restitution of some kind. Remember, in life you will make many mistakes, but you can never be too kind or too fair. Chapter 4. Change your thinking, change your life. I have always believed, and I still believe, that whatever good or bad fortune may come our way, we can always give it meaning and transform it into something of value. Hermann Hesse. It is not what happens to you in life that determines how you feel. It is how you respond to what happens. Two people may have the same experience, but one will rise above it, let it go, forget about it, and get on with his or her day or life. The other person will be crushed, angry, resentful, and often unhappy for an extended period of time. Same event, two different reactions. A Course in Miracles says, "You give meaning to everything you see." And Shakespeare said, "Nothing is, but thinking makes it so." The fastest way to transform from negative to positive and to free yourself from the unhappy experiences of the past is to resolve to see your past in a different way. When you practice the law of substitution and exchange a positive thought for a negative thought, your emotions change almost instantly. Motivational speaker Wayne Dyer once said, "It's never too late to have a happy childhood." Your interpretation style. In other words, by going back to your childhood and revising your memories of the unhappy experiences you had, You can turn them from bad to good, from depressing to elevating, and begin seeing your childhood in a totally new and positive way. By interpreting memories in a new way, you feel different about them. In the Hindu religion, followers believe in multiple reincarnations. They believe that each person is born and dies over and over again for hundreds and thousands of years. At the end of each life, when you are reincarnated into another life, you move up to a higher level towards salvation and oneness with the Supreme Soul, or down to a lower level, away from salvation, depending on how you behaved in your previous lifetime. Were you positive or negative, good or bad, helpful or hurtful? The ultimate end of this process of reincarnation and progressive development, according to the Hindus, is the achievement of spiritual perfection on this earth. You then rise to nirvana, or heaven, and become free of the endless cycle of birth and death on this earth. Whether or not you believe in reincarnation, here's an exercise you can do that can enable you to go back and have a happy childhood. Exercise. Imagine that somewhere on the other side of the universe, long before you were born, you were able to search over the earth and select your next parents. In making this selection, you deliberately chose parents who would bring you into a situation in which you could learn the lessons that you most needed to learn in this next lifetime. You chose these parents so that you could experience the trials and tribulations of a life growing up in this family because it was the only way you could learn, evolve, and grow into a better and finer person. When you play with this idea and look back at your parents, siblings, and childhood experiences, you will begin to identify the lessons you learned from each problem or difficulty you had while you were growing up. But now, by accepting that you chose your family yourself, you see them as valuable steps on your path of growth and development. Think of the impact your parents have had on you. Can you identify how they have influenced your greatest strengths and weaknesses? Learn from those experiences. Many people spend decades complaining about things that their parents did or did not do to or for them when they were growing up. That was true for me. I remember once when I was in my early 30s and I was out on a date with a young woman. Over dinner, I started to recollect and complain about my father and how many mistakes he made with me during my childhood. The young woman quite intelligently stopped me and asked, "Brian, are you happy to be alive?" I said, "Of course, I really enjoy my life." She then said, "Well, your father got you here, so stop complaining." I remembered being momentarily stunned, and then I realized that she was right. From that day forward, I never complained about my father or my childhood again. You can do the same. Whatever your parents did or didn't do, they got you here. They gave you the greatest gift of all, your life. You can always be grateful to them for that. The great power that loves you here is another exercise for you. Imagine that somewhere in the universe, there is a great power that loves you and wants the very best for you. This great power wants you to be happy, healthy, and fulfilled. It wants you to be successful and prosperous. This great power also knows that you can rise to greater heights of happiness, joy, and pleasure only by learning certain essential lessons along the way. And it knows that you have a perverse nature you will not learn unless it hurts. You cannot learn from reading about or observing the experiences of others. You can learn only when you feel pain, physical, emotional, or financial. It takes pain to get your attention so that you can learn the lessons you are meant to learn. Therefore, in order to teach you, train you, and guide you toward your higher good, this great power sends you lessons, each accompanied by pain, so that you will listen and pay attention. Look for the gift. Norman Vincent Peale once said, "Whenever God wants to send you a gift, he wraps it up in a problem. The greater the gift that God wants to send you, the greater the problem he wraps it up in." When you look into every problem or difficulty you have in your life as if it contained a gift of some kind, you begin to see things differently. The challenge for most people is that they experience the pain, but they are so busy complaining and blaming others that they don't see the gift. Your biggest problem. Think about all the problems that you have in your life right now. Now imagine that this major problem has been sent to you containing a gift in the form of a lesson that you need to learn so that you can be happier and more successful in the future. What is that lesson? One of the most powerful ways to change your thinking in your life is to seek the valuable lesson in every problem or difficulty you encounter. The most amazing thing is that if you look for a lesson in a setback or a difficulty, you will always find at least one lesson, and sometimes many. Exercise. List 3 setbacks or temporary failures that you have experienced in your life. Now, Can you reinterpret them and see them as learning experiences? What are the valuable lessons that the great power was trying to send you? When you think about your biggest problem today, which usually involves another person, ask yourself, what is the lesson I am meant to learn from this problem or difficulty? Dig deeper. Your first answer will usually be simple and superficial. Maybe I should do more of this or less of that. But now comes the most important part. Ask yourself, what else is the lesson that I am meant to learn in this situation? You drill down deeper. This time, the lesson will be more important and significant, if not painful. Perhaps you need to start doing something different or stop something else altogether. Then you ask again, what else is the lesson that I am meant to learn? You drill even deeper. As you continue asking this question, the lessons will become more and more relevant and helpful, often more painful. Finally, if it is a major problem in your life that you have been wrestling with for a long time, you will reach the real lesson that you are meant to learn. It is usually that you need to change, get out of, or eliminate something in your current life. Face the truth. When you recognize the lesson contained in your unhappy situation and realize that you need to make a dramatic change in your life, you'll usually encounter ego problems. You avoid facing the situation. You practice denial, wishing and hoping that somehow it will get better on its own, when in your heart you know it never will. When you finally develop the courage to face the truth about your situation and take the necessary actions dictated by that truth, something amazing will happen. All your stress will disappear. You will feel happy and at peace. You will feel calm and relaxed. You've heard it said that denial is not a river in Egypt. Denial, or the refusal to face the truth or reality of your situation, is a major source of stress, anxiety, negative emotions, and even physical and mental illness. The opposite of denial is acceptance. When you accept that the situation is the way it is, recognize that it is not going to change, and act accordingly, all your stress fades away. Learned optimism. Dr. Martin Seligman of the University of Pennsylvania, one of the founders of positive psychology, conducted 22 years of research on the subject of optimism. One of his most important conclusions was that people are optimistic or pessimistic depending upon their explanatory style. Your explanatory style is defined as how you interpret events to yourself. Remember that perception is reality, and each person has his or her own perception of a situation. That's why they say there are always three sides to a story: the first person's, the second person's, and what actually happened. In neuro-linguistic programming, there are the concepts of framing and reframing. This is another way of describing explanatory style. It is not the situation that causes you to feel happy or unhappy. It is your interpretation of the situation to yourself as being either positive or negative. By reframing a past negative experience into a positive lesson, you will find that your emotional memory will totally shift and relieve you of those previous negative feelings. Choose your words carefully. Language is very important in this area. The words that you choose to use to interpret an event can trigger thoughts, feelings, emotions, and reactions, positive or negative. Words can make you happy or sad, encouraged or discouraged, excited or depressed. One of the fastest ways to switch your mind from negative to positive when something goes wrong is to change your vocabulary. For example, instead of the word problem, use the word situation. A problem is negative. It immediately conjures up images of loss, delay, and inconvenience. But the word situation is neutral. When you say, "We have an interesting situation here," there is no negative emotional charge attached to the word. As a result, you remain calm, clear, and more capable of dealing with whatever the situation might be. See an obstacle as a positive challenge. An even better word is challenge. Instead of reacting to a difficulty as if it were a problem or a personal attack on you or your business, say, "We have an interesting challenge to deal with." A challenge is something that you rise to. It brings out the best in you. It is positive and uplifting. We look forward eagerly to challenges that cause us to stretch and become even better by overcoming them. The best word of all in describing a problem is opportunity. Instead of thinking about problems or difficulties, from now on, talk about the unexpected setbacks in your life as challenges or opportunities. An opportunity is something that we all want and look forward to eagerly. It is amazing how many of your greatest opportunities first appear as problems and difficulties. Near-death experiences. Many people have experienced what is called a near-death experience. Usually in the midst of a surgery, they have actually died. Their hearts have stopped and their brainwave activity has ceased. Fortunately, the miracles of modern medicine have resuscitated them and brought them back to life on the operating table. Many of these people have reported a similar experience after having died. First of all, they saw themselves lying dead on the operating table with the doctors and nurses scrambling to bring their body back to life. The second thing that these people report is a tremendous feeling of peace and relief. Nothing in their previous life seems important anymore. They are completely relaxed and experience a sense of bliss. Third, they report seeing a distant bright light that they begin moving toward faster and faster. As they move toward this light, the feeling of peace, happiness, and even elation increases. They feel completely relaxed and at one with the universe as the light gets brighter and brighter. The lessons of life. The fourth common occurrence reported by people who have gone through a near-death experience is that on the other side, they are asked two questions. What have you learned in this lifetime? And how have you increased your capacity to love in this lifetime? Then back on the operating table, the surgical staff resuscitates the body and brings it back to life. Suddenly, the person feels as though he or she is being sucked backward away from the light at an increasing speed. At a certain moment, everything goes black. The next thing people recall is waking up in a hospital room with members of their family and the medical staff around them. So now we know. At the end of your life, there is a final exam, and we even know the questions on that exam. Throughout our lifetimes, one of our main goals is to develop excellent answers to those questions. This is the great business of life, to have these good answers. What have you learned, and how have you increased your capacity to love? Reframe your experiences. When you reinterpret or reframe problems or difficulties, challenges or opportunities, you make a habit of looking for the good in every situation. When you look for something good in what initially appears to be a setback or difficulty, you will always find something positive. You will always find a benefit or an advantage. And the wonderful thing is that while you are looking for something good, your mind remains positive and optimistic. Your emotions remain calm and under control. It is impossible to experience stress and anxiety while you are looking for the good and seeking the valuable lesson. A word from Christina. I once worked with a man who was suffering from complete disengagement at work and the inability to really enjoy anything in the rest of his life. He had a pessimistic view of the world and saw only the negative in every situation he experienced. Whenever something went wrong, he would personalize it and blame the problem on some weakness or characteristic within himself. He assumed that the problem was direct proof that he wasn't smart enough, analytical enough, and so on. He walked around believing that anything that went wrong was because he was a bad person. We had to work together reinterpreting and reframing his experiences in a positive way. He had to learn that sometimes things just happen, and that each experience provides an opportunity for growth. As he learned to shift his perspective from a pessimistic to an optimistic worldview at work, his ability to tolerate setbacks went way up. He bounced back from adversity faster. Overall, he became a happier person by learning to interpret what happened to him in a positive way. And you can do the same. Your job is to stay focused on the potential advantage or benefit of your current difficulties and keep your mind off the aspects of the situation that might make you angry or unhappy. Problems and crises. New Thoughts spiritual leader Emmett Fox wrote, "Great souls learn great lessons from small problems. Your life will be an endless series of problems, difficulties, and challenges of all kinds. They come ceaselessly like the waves of the ocean. They never stop. They only increase or decrease in intensity. The only interruption to this endless series of problems will be the occasional crisis. If you are living an active life, you will probably have a crisis every 2 to 3 months. It may be a physical, financial, family, or personal crisis, but you will have a crisis of some kind. By its very nature, a crisis comes unbidden. It is an unanticipated reversal or setback that you cannot prepare for or do anything about. The only real question then is whether you respond to it effectively or ineffectively. If each person has a crisis of some kind every 2 or 3 months, it means that at this moment, you are in a crisis, or you have just gotten out of a crisis, or you are just about to have a crisis. Your job is to take a deep breath when the crisis occurs, keep yourself calm, look for the good, seek the valuable lesson, and then take action to reduce or minimize the crisis. We will talk about this at greater length in the next chapter. Think about what you want. The law of concentration says that whatever you dwell upon grows in your life. The more you think about what you want and where you are going, the more positive and optimistic you remain. As Helen Keller said, when you turn toward the sunshine, the shadows fall behind you. In changing your thinking, you put a positive spin on those situations in your life that might make you feel unhappy for any reason. Look for the silver lining to the cloud. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, when the night is the darkest, the stars come out. Many people suffer from worry and anxiety continually. Usually, this is learned from a parent who is also a worrier. Fortunately, most of the things that you worry about never happen. Instead, it is the things that you never thought to worry about that cause most of your unhappiness. The disaster report. One of the best ways to stop worrying is to fill out a disaster report on every problem or difficulty that is causing you any worry or anxiety right now. There are 4 steps to completing the disaster report. Step 1. Define the worry situation clearly. What exactly are you worrying about? Many people are worrying about something that is vague or unclear. Their thinking is confused. Like children in the night, they experience feelings of anxiety for reasons about which they are unclear, or they do not have sufficient information, which can cause them to overreact. Sometimes they are upset about something about which there is nothing they can do in any case. The very act of defining your worry situation clearly, in writing if possible, will often indicate an immediate solution that eliminates the worry situation completely. Doctors say that accurate diagnosis is half the cure. Step 2. Determine the worst possible outcome of this worry situation. What is the worst thing that could possibly happen? Most negative emotions and worry situations are caused by denial. The person feels under an enormous amount of stress because he is denying the reality of the situation. He does not want it to be true. He hopes that if he ignores it, it will go away. But this never works. When you identify the worst thing that could possibly happen as a result of this worry situation, you often find that it is not as bad as you thought. It is something you can live with. It may be the end of a relationship, but it won't kill you. It may be the loss of a certain amount of money, but it won't bankrupt you. Even if it does bankrupt you, the worry situation is a fact, not a problem, and has to be faced. You'll earn the money back at a later time, doing something different in a different way and a different place. If it is a health problem, resolve to confront it squarely. Refuse to play games with yourself. Do whatever you can to resolve the health problem, and then trust to the experts and to a higher power. There is a wonderful line from the Bible, Ephesians 6:13, ESV, that says, "Having done all, stand firm." Step 3, resolve to accept the worst, should it occur. Since most stress is caused by a refusal to identify the worst possible outcome and then a further refusal to accept it, once you resolve to accept the worst, your stress evaporates. You suddenly feel calm and at peace. When you replace denial with acceptance, you take full mental and emotional control of the situation. Step 4, begin immediately to improve upon the worst. Do everything that you possibly can to minimize the damage, control the costs, and cut your losses. Become so busy taking action to resolve your difficulties that you don't have any time left to worry. Zero-based thinking. Finally, in changing your thinking in your life, practice zero-based thinking in every area of your life. Ask yourself, is there anything I'm doing in my life that, knowing what I now know, I wouldn't do again if I had it to do over? It is amazing how much stress and unhappiness is caused by being in a situation that, knowing what you now know, you wouldn't get into again if you had it to do over. It takes tremendous courage and character to admit that you made a mistake, that you changed your mind, and that you wouldn't get into this situation again if you had to do it over. People hang on to the idea that once they've committed themselves to something, they must see it through at all costs. However, it is a strength, not a weakness, to admit you did not make the right decision, that you are not perfect. And you always have the right to change your mind with new information. Move quickly. Once you have determined that you would not get into that situation again, your next question is, how do I get out and how fast? It seems that as soon as you decide to take action to resolve a difficulty, your stress disappears. It is the uncertainty caused by inaction that generates most of the stress about the situation. The minute you decide to take action and resolve the situation, you feel a tremendous sense of relief and your course becomes clear. You have an extraordinary mind. As the poet John Milton writes in Paradise Lost, "The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven." Resolve today to use this wonderful mind of yours to think in a positive and constructive way about who you are, what you want, and where you are going. From this moment on, refuse to interpret things to yourself in a negative way, a way that makes you unhappy, angry, and frustrated. Instead, look for the good and seek the valuable lesson. Approach each problem or difficulty as a challenge or opportunity. Most of all, get so busy working on solving the problem and accomplishing the things that are important to you that you don't have time for worry or concern. Exercise. Fill out the disaster report. 1. What is your biggest problem or worry right now? 2. What is the worst possible outcome of this situation? 3. If the worst case scenario occurred, how would it affect you? Could you live with it? Of course you could. 4. Take action immediately to make sure that the worst does not happen. Or if it has happened, get so busy solving the problem and minimizing the damage that you don't have any time to spare worrying about it. Do it now.